into the tridactyl mummies.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
So, I think people have conflated a lot of the different mummies that are out there, first of all. There's
good point.
60 of them or something. And probably a fair number of them, I wouldn't necessarily call them hoaxes. I would say that they are constructed. But they're old constructs, so maybe there's some sort of homage paid to the ancestors or something like that, whatever they are. So there are some ones that you clearly look at, you go, oh, come on.
Right.
That never lived.
Then there's the fetal position
Then there's
ones.
the fetal position ones, the big ones.
Yeah.
And I was at the beginning, I'm always open to being wrong. I was at the beginning thinking, oh, well, because of the small ones, those are probably not real. But then the MRIs started coming out.
Yeah.
The full body MRIs and the ligature and the bone construction and the finger, and then perhaps most, I think, extraordinarily, the fingerprints on them being clearly not human. So it's interesting. But here's the problem, is that because there's so much circus around them, unfortunately created by people who want a circus because it sells their TV shows, no scientist of any merit would go near it. So I was approached many times, to study them. And I said, I'll do it on one condition. Here's the money I need, not personally, but here's the money I need to do the kinds of analysis to accomplish this right. Second, there will be no TV cameras. And you won't hear from me again until I'm ready to talk, because I'll have double-checked and triple-checked and quadruple-checked the results, and then I'll have gone out, as I did with the Atacama mummy, bringing in further contiguous circles of experts to double-check me.
And not make it a circus.
Because I won't name the TV show that wanted to do it, but they wanted to follow me around with a camera. And I'm like, no, this isn't how science is done.
Right.
I can't do it with those strictures. So I would say that if anybody's going to do it again, lock the things away with South American scientists. You don't need a North American scientist to come in and do it. There's plenty of smart people in South America who can do this properly. And respect the rights of the indigenous peoples who own the sacred grounds within which these things were found. I think that's important. And then do the analysis right. They made, I think, the mistake of saying, well, we've done the DNA and there's a lot of DNA that doesn't match. Anything, and the stuff is several hundred years old, anything that old, you won't get a lot of good DNA out of it. But they did the same thing with the Denisovan and the Neanderthal. You have to correct the chemical errors that occur over time. There are ways to what's called bioinformatically correct. You need to do what's called over-reading of the genome, where you do so many reads of it that you stack them all up line by line. Like if you had 1,000 versions of an ancient Bible, you would stack up the lines one by one, and finally you find one line that has this letter, that's correct, and then this one correct, and then you basically do a summation of an averaging of the correctness. And so they say, oh, well, there's 90% of the genome is non-human. It's probably garbage. It's probably these mistakes. It's probably bacterial contamination that you're reading. There's ways to deal with that, but that requires money and not one-off DNA sequences put on the interwebs for some amateur genomicist to make a claim about.
Right.
So there's ways to do it. I mean, you would want, at the end of the day, to get the results to the level where you could go to the guys who did the Denisovan and the Neanderthal DNA, the Max Planck and others who won the Nobel Prize for it, and say, hey, what do you think? But you don't dare take it to people like that until you've done your homework.
I see. Yeah.
Right. And you do it behind the scenes. You don't put them under a flashlight.
Right.
And people, I think, have gotten used to this click mentality of impatience where I want the result today. Why can't you just make it all transparent? Dump all the data on the web tomorrow. You're not transparent. You're hiding something. No, I'm not. I am just trying to make sure that you don't make the mistake and accuse me of making the mistake that you'll find in the data, because the raw data is never clean.
In the Daily Mail headline.
In the Daily Mail
it's
headline.
Never accurate.
So, long story short, I think there's still something worth looking at there.
Well, the scans are fascinating, right?
Yeah, the scans are the most interesting to me.
Have you seen the Jesse Michaels, the newest video?
Yeah, Jesse's a good friend.
He's great. I love that guy. And the episode that he did is fantastic. And when you see the scans and they go over the bone structure of the thing and you look at it, you're like, God, that looks real. Yeah. If that's a hoax from 1,700 years ago or
exactly,
yeah, whoever, if the carbon isotope dating that they did on it is accurate.
I've looked at that data. It looks good.
Okay. So then it is that old. Fuck you then.
Yeah.
Because there's no way someone back then could fake that.
And somebody asked me the other day, they said, well, could you have a single mutation? Or I said, no. I mean, because you don't get one mutation that does all that.
Right.
You know, evolution works step by step, that this does this, but it has a mistake, but it's corrected by this mutation over here in evolution, which is corrected by this. And so the genome fluctuates over time, compensating for the errors that would otherwise have killed you.
Also, one of them is pregnant.
That's fast. Yeah, I know.
Okay, so it's a 3-foot pregnant thing that doesn't look remotely human being.
Yeah. So the jury is still out.
Right.
But if they're going to do it right, they need to sequester the stuff away, bring in the right people with sufficient resources, and get rid of the cameras.
Have you talked to them? Have you encouraged this? Is it
Openly.
possible to nudge this in the right direction? And where's it at right now?
I wrote out on Twitter a full thing of what they needed to do. I mean, the easiest first milestone to do, to be honest, that could be done within a couple of months, is if it is somewhere in the hominid or, let's say, vertebrate line, there are metabolism genes that we all share. In fact, there are metabolism genes that we share with bacteria that are very similar. So do you know the technique called polymerase chain reaction, PCR?
Yes.
So, why try to do the whole genome? Why not just target a bunch of genes that we know evolve slowly, but do evolve, and PCR those out? Because that's easier to do than is trying to assemble a whole genome. And then by having just those, let's call it preliminary sets of evidence, you could then say, this actually, reproducibly, if I take a sample from the finger, I take a sample from the bone marrow, I take a sample from here or there on the body, and I take a sample from the 3 different main things, and I see the same mutations, and they're different or somehow aligned with hominid evolution, right? We compare it to all the known hominids. I mean, that would be the kind of data that you could actually publish in a journal like Nature if you did it right. Because that's the only way that you're going to get anybody to pay attention.
There's also the bizarre anecdotal nature of some of the artwork. Like the fact that these people did a lot of these tapestries and a lot of ancient artwork that's 1,000 years old that depicts these 3-fingered things. So it's like, what are they describing? Are they describing these actual creatures? That was there only a few of them and it was a weird genetic mutation? Or is this a common visitor that they're describing?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I mean, why would you put them in a cave in Peru? I don't know.
And if you didn't put them in a cave in Peru, what would be left? That's the problem. Yeah. The problem is it's really hard to make a fossil. It's really hard to find bones. Think about all the people that died.
Right.
And we don't find that many bones, relatively speaking, in comparison to the fucking billions of people that died.
Right.
It's not like we're tripping over human bones every day.
Right. Except in mass graves.
Yeah. Right. That's really And even in mass graves, given enough time, they will deteriorate. Like mass graves from 1,000, 1,700 years ago, whatever these things are.
So, I find them interesting, and I hope that behind the scenes there are people who are taking a more methodical approach to this, who I think should remain stealthed, until they have the data to the point where it is
They can
publishable.
publish. Yeah.
You know, publishing a white paper or putting something out on the internet is not the same as putting out data that has all of the instruments that you used, the methods that you used, etc. The reason you want papers, frankly, when you publish them, to be almost boring and so thick with detail that no pseudo-skeptic would dare approach it because they're just not smart enough. But if you put out these snippets that don't have sufficient background, they can be picked apart by anybody. Right? But that's why peer review is so important. And people mistake peer review as trying to get the reviewers to agree with your conclusions. No, the main purpose of peer review is actually to make sure that the methods that you used are sufficiently detailed and are correct enough to the extent you came to any conclusions, they match the methods that you used.
And when you think about these potential, whatever they are, whatever these creatures are, if we did find out that they are some sort of a hominid, how much credence do you give to the theory that there's like the possibility that these UFOs, UAPs, whatever it is a break-off civilization from a very, very long time ago that's very different from us, just same way we're very different from chimpanzees,
Right.
which we coexist with?
Right. I have no problem conjecturing that. Did you ever see the Netflix show Chimp Empire?
Yes.
Amazing, right?
Amazing.
20 million years of separation, and it looked like fucking faculty meeting. With people like looking at each other and planning and plotting,
Yep.
board meeting, and so we shared all of those interactions from 20 million years ago. So how much further back would you have to go to have something like what
Right.
that is? I mean, it's clearly not recent.
And also, if you think about what we are in comparison to chimps, we're so fragile, we're frail, we're easily injured, well, if you think of something that's far more technologically advanced than us, it would be even more frail. It would be even more petite. It would have almost no muscle at all. It would look, weirdly enough, like the Greys from Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
That's what it would look like. If it was a hominid that's whatever we are, and it went way past that.
Right. Yeah, no, technology gives evolution the excuse to no longer make or allow for you to be
Robust.
Robust. Thank you.
Yeah,
That was the
and
word
also,
I'm looking for.
why do you need opposable thumbs?
Yeah.
Right? These things don't even have opposable thumbs.
That was what's weird about it.
Right.
It's like, how do you interact with your environment? They look more like sloths than they do.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, at least their hands do.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I find it.
Well, if everything's done with AI and automation and your interface is purely neurological, like so you have some sort of a human or a creature neural interface with technology, and you just use fingers to like lay them on electronics so that you can sync up with it.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why are you picking things up, bro? You don't have to pick things up anymore. Those go away just like,
Can you imagine the scenario of, I mean, these things we know are, the bodies are real. What they are, we don't know. But can you imagine the scenario of what happened as they were being buried? What would they, could you like make a film of the ceremonial burial of these things? What led to their death? What led to their placement there? Or if they were constructed, which I have a hard time with given the MRIs that we've all seen, and et cetera, what led to it? And so that to me is as almost interesting as to whether or not they're real or not.
Right, like the ones that are clearly constructed, that's where it gets fascinating. Because, like, what were you trying to reproduce?
Yes.
And why are they so similar to the ones that look real?
Yeah. Is it an homage to the ancestors or to the stories of the ancestors, et cetera? Yeah.
Well, especially when you look at Peru. Like, Peru is like, you've got the Nazca lines, which are really weird.
Right.
You can only see them from the sky, and they're everywhere, and they're huge. And these depictions of very strange things.
I just ask my scientific colleagues to not suspend disbelief, but to open your minds as to the possibility of what these things might mean, and just try to explain them without dismissing them. Because it's so easy, and politics, we see it every day. All you need to do is just give any answer, even if it's obviously, flagrantly wrong, as a way to deflect. And so, you can either use that approach. You shouldn't use that approach ever as a scientist, deflect, which unfortunately is what someone like, Neil deGrasse Tyson often does.
Yeah.
As opposed to try to explain in a way that teaches your audience the right way to think.
Yeah, well said. One of the things that Jacques Vallée highlighted is there's an alloy, another piece of metal, that they'd found that had layers like these at an atomic level.
Yep.
That if you wanted to make this alloy today, it would be almost impossible, and it would cost billions of dollars.
So I worked with him on one of those pieces. I got the atomic imaging of some of that. And it's, I'm blanking on the event, but it was the Sirocco event.
And where was that?
In, I think, New Mexico. I'm going to get in trouble for not knowing exactly. But and we actually did a atomic layering using this device called atomic probe tomography, where you literally pick it apart atom by atom and get its 3D position. It's a 40-year-old technology, so it's nothing magic. And it would just be very difficult to make it. And certainly it would be not something that you would have dropped in the middle of the desert. Socorro, in the middle of the desert, in the 1970s or whenever it was. I wouldn't say it's impossible to make, but why you would do it is another question. It's clearly evidence of technology and manufacture. And that's what interests me is, first of all, why would you do it? Why would you create something, for instance, with the silicon and the magnesium with the altered ratios? Not the where did it come from? So what is it evidence of? It's clearly evidence of technology.
Was this technology available at the time this supposed crash happened?
Which one? No. Not at the level of precision that was done, and a chunk of, and no, it just wasn't.
It just wasn't. So if that's true, and if that's the chain of evidence is correct, and it really did come from that area, from that crash, that's not a human creation.
Well, it wasn't a crash. It was an object that a policeman had seen with short beings outside of it, and when it took off and left, he went over and found this piece that I personally have it now.
Huh.
So, but it's hard to say what's possible and what's not possible. So, there's plenty of military programs that make stuff that are way outside of mainstream capabilities right now. I mean, just look at the stealth bomber,
right,
for instance, and the skin of the stealth bomber is just remarkable.
Is it possible they were doing that in 1970?
Maybe.
So
that's why I always leave open the possibility that, which is why, I'm going to go back to this atomic imager thing that I'm making. It's like there's a level of evidence that I think can be produced with atomic imaging that goes beyond what it is we know anybody can make, right? So, and so that's my reason for wanting to do it, because, look, I can make money on it with looking at alloys and nanomaterials, et cetera, and that's going to be what the purpose of making the instrument will. That's how it will be a company, but it will have value elsewhere. So the reason that I got interested in it was, frankly, for looking at chromosomes, but then I realized, maybe it has interest, maybe it would be useful for these other things as well, which has kind of propelled my interest in it.
Well, Jacques Vallée is such a valuable researcher because he's so logical about the way he handles things, and he doesn't jump to any conclusions.
Yep.
And his descriptions of these materials and the origin of these materials is really compelling, because it's just like, if that's not really possible to make in 1970, then someone help me out.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
And is it possible to make today? And how much would it cost?
Right.
And where would you do it?
Well, that's why the magnesium ratio thing was, when I first estimated, it was like, this is millions and millions of dollars, and why would you leave it on a beach in the middle of Ubatuba, Brazil?
Right.
It just seems unlikely. Nothing's impossible.
No.
But unlikely.
Well, then
and then it's usually the chain of evidence. There's lots of materials that you might find that are unusual. And believe me, I get rocks sent to me at my lab in the mail that people say, "Oh, this is unusual." No, it's a rock. Sorry, it's a rock. But I have not yet been given anything which I could definitively say this is not something a human might have been able to make. It might be difficult, but not impossible yet. And so that's because the level of resolution required to claim something is impossible is something we actually don't even have yet. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense.
So that's what so my whole career has been inventing instruments that were, I felt, inevitable, but not yet possible. But I could see a path to making them, and so I said to most people, get out of my way, I'm going to do this, because I know once I've got it, it will become valuable to everybody, that's what made my career in immunology, making a succession of instruments like that, and then making them available to the community. So I think the next level is atomic, because we now know, you can pick up and look at any of the major physics journals today, everything is all about these weird exotic particles that exist in metamaterials down at the atomic level with vague and strange capabilities that will change their utility either as superconductors, room temperature, or different kinds of electronic components that might be better quantum computer circuits and qubits. It's all down at that level. But to do so requires a level of engineering that never mind reading what it is, putting it together in the first place is what's still required. And so if we don't know how to put it together in the first place, then reading it and knowing that it can exist and then associating it with a function is the value that I'm looking to bring.
Well, this brings me to the idea of crash retrieval and the idea that these crash retrievals started a long time ago and that Roswell was just one of many. There's another one that was near Roswell that apparently was even more significant but didn't get in the newspaper.
Trinity, are you talking about?
It
was the one that Jacques was involved with studying.
I'm basing this off of Richard Dolan's book.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, the point being that if they did do that, if they really did back engineer something, and then they started these completely top secret scientific research projects where they were developing alloys that had never existed before with techniques that they had never really even considered because they got it all from some spaceship. Well, that's where it's really crazy if you don't disclose this information, because you're basically putting a bottleneck on human evolution, human technological evolution, and our understanding of what's actually possible.
Right. I agree. And if you're going to excite the next generation of scientists in this country, and you're going to bring economic prosperity to this country, then we should, I wouldn't say democratize it and put it all out on the internet. I understand all the reasons why you might not need to, but you need to excite the populace. I mean, my laboratory at Stanford for probably the last 10 years is 90% foreigners. Not because I don't want to take more Americans, but because Americans just don't go into the sciences anymore. They don't study math. They aren't encouraged to approach this. So we're importing a lot of our scientists from overseas. Well, guess what? A good third of them end up going back and bringing all the technology that they invented here back there and creating competitors. Now, maybe that's good on a global scale, but maybe it's not something that we want to encourage on a local scale if we want to maintain our technological superiority. And we're basically governed by lawyers. China is governed by engineers. You know, I
When
mean,
you see the results in their drone technology and
Yeah.
electric cars and the things that are coming out of China recently.
their Politburo is almost entirely engineers and scientists.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's a little article in the Atlantic recently about
Well, that's
that.
a giant advantage.
Yeah. So people who are making these, we have lawyers looking for all the reasons why something should or shouldn't be done and the liabilities. They're looking at things as to what's possible.
When you're looking at these UAP things that people bring you, what is there one that stands out as being the most compelling to you? One event?
Well, both the Council Bluffs and the Ubatuba event are interesting to me.
Because of the physical
Because of the
materials?
physical material itself. I mean, I'm, at the end of the day, a physicalist. You know, I mean, I don't like all the anecdotes. I mean, 1,000 anecdotes make a good story, good campfire. I mean, I think there's statistical value in people seeing the same thing again and again, and there's a truth to it. But as you know, and I can believe anything I want to around that, and many of the statements that I'm purported to have said are around my beliefs, as opposed to when I put on my scientist hat and I try to convince another scientist, I can only provide this data and this evidence, and I don't have yet these materials. Now, maybe they exist. And maybe, you know, people like David Grush will be able to pry them out of the clammy hands of those who want to keep it where it is. But give me one piece of that, and I will do wonders with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm so excited about the UAP Disclosure Act if it ends up becoming law, because there will be this ability to start to maybe eke some of this out. And again, it's the reason why I think this commercial opportunity is the direction we want to go, where we have a sort of public-private partnership, is that the defense budget in and of itself is a zero-sum game. We're taking money from one program to give to another. You know, whether you're taking it from your taxes, or you're taking it from veterans, you know, insurance, et cetera, it's a zero-sum game. Whereas if you bring the investment community in, now you're bringing in people who are willing to take a chance and willing to take a risk, and you're not using the public's money anymore. And so, and that excites, I mean, me as the reason why I wanted to go back to Stanford is because the entrepreneurial environment there, and now which is actually almost homegrown here in Austin, is really what drives innovation. And so I want to excite that kind of community. And again, the Soul Foundation is a place where we can bring people in, and we've got investors who show up now who are talking to people about their ideas and what would we do with this. And so it almost has now a self-propelling movement where I don't need to be standing on a wooden box somewhere in the middle of the park saying, you know, look at this, look at this. People are just doing it now. There's now a whole, almost a cottage industry of small groups or formalized groups who are doing this independently now. So it's almost like it's inevitable. So Skywatcher, as an example, you probably know of the Skywatcher group.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
And Jake
Didn't
Barber.
they just stop operations? Did something happen?
No, it's strange because people said, "Oh, we stopped." No, actually, it had been determined from the beginning that we were going to go from January until July or August and collect data, and now we're in the what does the data mean phase, where we're literally going through the data, looking at the data files and trying to as I said before, we're filtering the data, we're looking for the obvious mistakes, et cetera. And so, no, they've not stopped.
Yeah, there was something on Twitter about something about the equipment. I forget.
No, so James Fowler, one of the guys who brought a lot of his equipment and technology to us, decided that he wanted to basically go off and work in a DoD capacity, as opposed to the research capacity. But he's still advising us. I was just on a Zoom call with him last week, going over the data files.
So explain this Skywatcher thing to people, because it sounds insane.
Well, the idea behind it was that there might be ways to send a signal and get things to show up. And
Right.
James Fowler claimed that he had such a thing. I was at one of the events where something showed up. It was transient, momentary, but indisputable. But it's just like,
What did it look like?
it was just a silver ball moving quickly through several frames of a video, which was not fast enough, frankly, to pick it up. We just saw it move. It went that way, and
You
then
didn't see it with your naked eye?
No, I didn't see it with the naked eye. Which, of course, is a problem.
Do they sometimes see things with the naked eye?
One guy did, yeah.
One guy.
Oh, I mean...
So are these things variable in their appearance?
I wish I don't have my phone here. But we do have a picture of one next to the helicopter, about 200 feet away, and it's just kind of a fuzzy white blob against a blue sky. But it was there, and it's not a cloud, and it's not a balloon. It's not discernible as anything obvious, but it was there, and it happened during one of these events out in the middle of the desert. And so, so the idea is behind Skywatcher is to see if there are ways to get them to show up, and if so, in a reproducible manner, and then have the right kind of simultaneous multi-sensor capabilities to measure it, meaning radar, IR, visual, people on the ground.
What are they sending to get these things to go? What signal?
James has a signal that unfortunately he won't. I don't know what it is.
He won't let everybody know what the bat signal is.
Well,
to call
I mean,
UFOs?
maybe, yeah, exactly. I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but I mean, why would you put that out on the internet? Because you might render it useless. They're like, oh, I'm not going to show up. Everybody's using it now.
Oh, so you think it's a trick? Like it tricks them into showing up?
I don't know. I really don't.
Don't you think they'd be smarter than that?
Well, that tells you something maybe about the level of smarts that might be incorporated into these, let's say, dumber machines. Maybe, yeah. That was exactly my thought. Is like, why would you show up when you know what it is, unless there's a reason you're basically trying to train the monkeys what to do. Maybe you're tricking the monkeys into sending... I don't know.
But isn't there a group of people that just go out and they just using their mind, they meditate, and supposedly they have some success as well?
Yeah, there's the CE5 groups that do that, and I've never participated in any of that because I don't know how to measure it. I'm more than willing to believe that there are technologies capable of measuring thoughts at a distance that might be some super advanced. I don't believe that you have to call it telepathy and magic. I think that there's, if such a thing happens, that there is a technology that might be able to read at a distance.
Right. Well,
I have no problem with that.
I don't have a problem with that either. I don't have a problem with the idea that consciousness is kind of vaguely and barely understood, and whatever our relationship to the universe itself and reality itself through consciousness is, it's not fully defined, and also it might evolve just like all of our other intellectual capabilities.
Right. Well, I mean, think of it this way. You and I are interacting with each other through quantum waves. My meat brain sees you as an object, but yet everything that you are sits in quantum space-time down at the Planck level, and you're not even mass. You're just a series of, in some people's minds, vibrating fields and objects. And so we have sensors that see and hear each other and think about each other, but our consciousness somehow is embedded in space-time. And so who's to say that there's not signals passing to and from that are vaguely able to be picked up by our meat brains that we don't necessarily appreciate? Right. So that just because I can't think at you and you can't hear me doesn't mean that there aren't perhaps brain organizations of some people that are a little bit better at hearing the echo than others.
Well, this is also probably the reason why when you go to the woods and there's no cell phone signals, the world feels different.
Yeah.
Because you're probably experiencing a bunch of signals that your brain vaguely interacts with.
Right.
That, might not even necessarily be good for you.
Right.
But they're out there and they're a part of the world that you live in.
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have a radio,
Right.
So you're not like tuning into them. You don't have a
Right.
cell phone, so you
Right.
can't just like make calls with it, but
Right.
you're experiencing it.
Right. Well, and, our civilization is drowning us in constant noise.
Yeah.
And so maybe, that drowns it out. And that's why meditation is why people claim that they can interact with other things. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I saw an interview that you did where you were describing the sighting over off the coast of San Diego in 2004, the Nimitz sighting, where you said that the amount of power. Why don't you describe it? So the amount of power that thing had to use to move the way it did.
Right. So
it's on radar.
It's on radar. So these are actually calculations by Kevin Knuth, a physicist from the University of Albany, and a published paper. Again, just speculation. But what he basically said was, how much power would it take to instantaneously accelerate from 50 feet over the ocean to 50 miles above the Earth, whatever the number was, and instantaneously decelerate? So it's not just the amount of power to lift something. It's the amount of power to accelerate and decelerate instantaneously. And so you can make simple physical calculations of a 1-ton object, let's say, and it's more than the nuclear output of the United States for a year. And yet these things seem capable of doing that at will. So where are they getting the energy from? And I remember asking Hal a question like this years ago. We were stepping into an elevator, and we were talking about his ideas about how these things might move. And I said, so they're cheating somehow, aren't they? And his answer was, from our point of view, they're cheating. From their point of view, they're just using the physics that we don't understand yet. So where's the energy coming from? What are they doing? And so that might be, for instance, a reason why you don't want everybody having access to it.
Yeah.
Because any one of those objects is worse than a thermonuclear bomb. You shoot one of those things at a city, and that's the end of the city. And if anybody could do it,
Well, maybe that's the step of human evolution, of the evolution of our society and civilization, is that AI has to come into power before we have access to all this other stuff.
Right.
That we do need an AI government structure.
Right.
That we do no longer require military intervention and all the shit that is the bane of civilization today. Because if you ask the average person today, do you envision a world where war doesn't exist? Most people are saying no.
Right.
The vast majority, except for a few delusional hippies, they're going to say no, right? But if you ask them, okay, given this super intelligent AI takes over the world and proves to be benevolent and really just wants to accentuate the life of human beings on Earth and make it better for everybody, then yes.
Right.
Then 100% yes.
Right.
Why would it want war?
Right.
Right? So maybe something like that has to take place before we get to a situation where, okay, this is how you really travel.
Right. Right.
Okay, now that you're not going to war anymore, listen.
But you can
show
already
about gravity bubbles.
You can already imagine the negatives where people will say, "Oh, well, it's the apocalyptic nanny state." Right, where AI just basically takes care of you and humans devolve into something, which is why I think a merger of human intellect with this, where it's a synergy as opposed to an either or. I don't want to be nanny stated either.
Right.
I want to use it to explore ideas or explore pleasure. I mean, I'm finding people want to be hedonistic and, participate in virtual parties all day long, for all I care. I don't care. But I think giving people the option to do whatever it is that they want to do, it's the most, it's the most liberal and conservative way of living, because you're allowed to do what you want to do. But we're not, because we're living at the behest of so many other strictures.
Always.
Right
now. Yeah. Last question. What's your take on the Bob Lazar story?
Elements of truth, with a healthy dose of misinformation that perhaps he was provided. I don't think that he's entirely lying. he seems to know enough about things that the average person wouldn't know. But, I've heard from Eric Davis and others saying, he's a this, he's a that. I don't know, because, it's like, that's why there are great people like Richard Dolan, who's a wonderful writer of the history of the area, or people like Robert Powell or Michael Swords, who write just the facts, not coming to too many conclusions. I don't live in that world. It's not my specialty. My specialty is working with data and analyzing things and bringing rigorous science to it so that I can convince another scientist what is right or what is wrong. Because I won't be happy. I mean, I'm pretty sure of what I know, but I want to validate that to my colleagues, if only to be able to say, I told you so. Right? There's a little bit of human pettiness in there. A
little bit of pettiness is great motivation.
Yeah, but that's, I think, again, enabling people to live in a world like that, where you can talk about these ideas without being ridiculed, is really, I think, the objective of what science should be, and what open-minded, non-theologically dogmatic approaches should be. It's like, accuse a scientist of being a priest, and that's the best way to really upset them. But pointing out that what they're doing is mimicking dogma and priesthood is the only way to shame them into doing the right thing. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Well, listen, man, I'm glad we finally did this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all the research that you're currently involved in, and all the stuff that you've done. And it's been amazing talking to you. Really
Same as
appreciate
well.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.